Have you given any thought to contributing to the melt? It's easy to do. Just click the Patreon link in the episode notes, and for as little as $3 a month, you can get access to bonus episodes, early access to regular episodes, and you can also participate in monthly Zoom meetups. It helps to keep the magic happening here at the Melt. So I encourage you to karmically entangle yourself with the Melt today by subscribing monthly for less than the price of a container of goatee wax, or a prosthetic pinky, or a half stick of DMT butter, or an inflatable casket, or the shrunken head of an Atlantean supermodel, or a woolly mammoth's merkin, or a crystalline replica of Baba Yaga's hut, or a capsule of Sasquatch dander.
This is Hunter Muse.
And this is Chris Snipes, and you are listening
to The Melt.
Is our society capable of accommodating those who are able to self-govern along with those who seem to need governing? If so, how would that look? It's tempting to want to promote a world where everyone governs themselves like big boys and girls, but alas, it doesn't work that way. Self-governance starts with self-awareness, and the length and depth of the process to cultivate that differs from individual to individual. But before any of that happens, one must arrive at a place where they understand that they were meant to be free of the laws of man, and that one's moral compass comes from within. Today's guest, Brandon Sibley, is an excellent guide in such territory. I start off the conversation by asking Brandon about the current status of his case involving the Choctaw Indians.
Well, yes, and it's unfortunate that they're part of this. It really is, because I still have a heart, and what has been transpired and been done to the individual Indians is no different than what's been done to us. We've all been made commercial instruments, and their tribes have gone in and decided to go for money and westernize and colonize and go to casinos and everything else, and they've lost their sovereignty.
They've kind of gone away from sovereignty and gone into the system.
Well, there was a huge decision yesterday from the Supreme Court where they allowed state jurisdiction. This is the dismantling of, here's the truth. Let's talk about sovereignty for a minute and what it really means. Sovereignty can't be given to a group. It's an individual attainment. That's what it is. It can't be given to a group. Individuals obtain sovereignty through self-mastery, self-control, and self-discipline. That's it. And so man creates institutions, therefore man is above the institutions that he creates, but he must do so with these attributes, right? Dedication, jurisprudence, the four cardinal virtues, all these ideas that we talk about, these principles. So what we've tried to do is insulate the Indians, but unfortunately for them, they've westernized. Unlike the Amish or the Mennonites or other groups where they said, we're not going to do it. They did, and then they decided to go into commercial activity and things of that nature. And then, of course, still try to claim their tribal sovereignty and everything else. But anyway, to get back on point, to show you how westernized they are, they fell victim to the cultural Marxism, which has been played out over the last 2.5 years by enacting mandates and everything else. So when they acted with all the other 50 governors and the agencies of the United States. What they did was work in lockstep with them and unfortunately opened themselves up. But then also through their casinos, they had a worldwide, southern 4-state advertisement and marketing campaign telling people to come to their casinos. Well, when you do that, what have you done? You've opened yourself up to everybody. If you invite one, you invite all. And it's an unfortunate incident that quote unquote tribe, which doesn't exist. It's just an idea on paper, and that's what people got to come to grips with. Even America is just an idea written on paper, right? That's it. It's just an idea, a great idea. Democracy, constitutional republics are great. They are wonderful, but they always have the same downfall, and it doesn't change from any time period. When the people become fat, lazy, and complacent, it destroys itself, as we're watching right now. And so the same thing has happened to the Indians, right, who have been under pretty much socialist control in their little deals, in their little areas, but they've westernized at the same time and decided to go into commerce. Well, we understand that entering into the world of commerce, trade, or business, you lose certain rights for privileges, and so that's one of the cases going through. It's a landmark. It's going to be a big deal. It's much more complicated than most people need to bite off and go chew. I won't tell anybody for flim flam anybody. But the purpose of it isn't to go harm the individuals that I'm up against. It's to stop these mandates coming from these administrative agencies, and so the executive branch through administrative agencies has been making executive orders, and the agencies are going out and trying to force everybody to comply. That's not how this system of government is supposed to work. We see right now the U.S. Supreme Court tearing this down. They're tearing it down. It's funny, but we have great people in high places right now making great decisions, and they're tearing. I was really hoping today, their last day in, that they were going to rule against the administrative agencies. I'll find out tomorrow when I read. And so anyway, with the Indians, we're going back to what our courts are supposed to be about. As a reasonable man, I'm a reasonable man. I don't contact very many reasonable people in my life anymore, because most people are ideologically lined on one of the hyper-polarized extremes. It doesn't matter which one. They haven't had an original thought their entire lives. They're just indoctrinated automatons walking around unconscious and just spewing whatever that's been drilled in. But either way, the whole purpose of the case is the strict scrutiny rule, which is a part of judicial review. And so when you learn how to write and plead a case correctly, and in this instance, I'm forcing the courts to go all the way back to like 1803, which is the standard Marbury versus Madison, that any law, ordinance, or department, agency, whoever makes any type of law that is repugnant to the Constitution, it is what is called void ab initio. It means it had no power and authority, right? And that's what we see with the Health Defense Fund ladies in Florida, what we see with the Supreme Court in Louisiana right here, who made the governor of Louisiana's proclamation, mandate, whatever, unconstitutional. And of course, I didn't hear many people talk about that too, by the way, for masks and things of that nature. The Louisiana Supreme Court ruled that the governor's mandate was unconstitutional. Well, for anybody in any other state, that's just as valid, because you can invoke what is called the full faith and credit clause of the United States Constitution, and it applies to your state too.
So back to the Choctaw tribe and their situation, which is very interesting, because I think a lot of people, and me at one point, thought that when the tribe started opening these casinos, that was going to give them some sort of at the very least, some sort of financial freedom, because most reservations are incredibly impoverished. There's some of the most horrible living conditions in the whole country, really. But that obviously has brought on another set of problems that maybe they didn't think about in the long term. And it's sort of made them subject to a system that they were trying to be separate from in the first place. What kind of challenges?
Well, we have to go back to human nature, and it doesn't matter if you're an Indian, European, whatever you are. Human nature plays out first. When you involve money in things, greed, cronyism, and all these other ideas are going to come into play. I mean, it's the nature of mankind. I mean, that's why you can't have groupthink ideology. Like, in principle, the idea was great, but the individuals, the actual, and there's still tribes. There's plenty of tribes out there that will not get involved with the casinos. They know better, and their tribal leaders know what the consequence of doing it is, so they refuse to do it. It's just like us. We're waking up to the reality that we've been sold under the bridge, right? And so we're wanting to do things that separate us from this commercial idea and become self-sustainable again and get off the people farm. I mean, we're no different than them. And our illustrious leaders have sold us under the bridge for nothing, right? It's the same idea, and it's unfortunate because ignorance played a big part in the guys there. I mean, that I encountered at that casino, just trying to stay the night. Look at the sign. This is tribal law. We're sovereign, but in law, in truth, if I say I have more rights than you, I've created what is called a discriminatory animus, right? I have made myself higher than you, then I have more authority than you, and now I have invidiously discriminated against you. That's just law. That's just reality. And the tribe itself, which is a fictitious entity, doesn't exist, didn't commit a crime against me. 6 of those men did.
Mm-hmm. So in what way are you acting on behalf of the Choctaw?
Well, so I've got a lawsuit against the chief who enacted the mandate, and then I've got five different causes of action of deprivation of constitutionally secured rights, absent of any lawful authority. Now, in my pleading and also in my motion that I'm writing right now, one of the things that you have to grasp is that this isn't just about money. This is about me also. It's in my motion that I'm writing right now that not only am I asking for this decision for me, but also for the other individual tribe members there that don't know any better, that were subjected to this draconian rule. And so if it's not stopped now, if we don't stop it now, it'll just keep going. It's within each state, within each little corner, we can see that they're trying to bypass individual liberty, which is the basis of all freedom, by the way. Liberty is the summit, equality is the base, right? So if there's not equal treatment between me and you, and this is how you identify how far cultural Marxism has gone, because, and I say that because it's an idea too, right? But you separate everybody into groups, and then what they realize, they forget that they're part of the whole, right? And you already attack and vilify anybody that doesn't think just like you. And really what everybody's in is a constant state of suspended adolescence. They can't think for themselves. They can't act for themselves. And we see it. Somebody sent me a video. I don't watch much. I didn't find out about Roe v. Wade until like 7 p.m. last Friday night. And it was a video of people out in the streets crying. And then I got a phone call from my crazy cousin who was going to the Capitol to march, right? It's like, what are you talking about? What is that going to do? But they don't think like that, right? We're just going to go out here and tear stuff up. It's like children throwing temper tantrums.
Yeah, Exactly. That's the part of the separation too, is because these aren't conversations that are happening. They're just demonstrations of violence, of dissatisfaction, and ostracizing anybody who, as you said, doesn't think exactly like you do. And that's not going to bridge any gaps. That's going to keep us in these little categories, which will ensure that we continue infighting.
Yeah, it's a destruction of the culture, but when you're demoralized to the point that in one of the greatest writings of all time is the Corpus Medicum. I don't know if you've ever read it, but it is. It's it's supposedly written by Hermes Trismegistus, right? But whoever wrote it, they knew the spiritual principles of all religion, right? And one of the best quotes in that book is, "Through mind and speech, man can become an immortal." And what's that mean? That means through the vehicle which conveys the instruction with a higher level of being able to write and speak, you can raise your consciousness up to that of the good aspect. But if you're a childlike mind, the Bible quote would be, "When I spake, thought as a child, I spake as a child, I acted as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things," right? And so that goes back to my previous premise, is that this suspended adolescence that we're watching here in this society is widespread, and it's even up to like 70, 80 year olds that are acting like children. And you can see what the problem, you can direct the problem to more mental illness than anything else, because we've gone cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
Well, it's like this inclusion to the nth degree. Like we want to include everybody so much that we're going to start including the mentally ill. And then nobody is mentally ill. Everything is up for grabs. It doesn't matter. It's just completely up to your subjective truth, how you want to manifest as a human being. And it doesn't really work that way. That's like several thousand centers of the universe. And that gets very confusing very quickly.
It really is. And I'll go back to Milton Friedman's quote on this. As soon as you said the forced inclusion, I remembered this one from Milton Friedman. "A society that puts equality, in the sense of equality of outcome, ahead of freedom will end up with neither equality nor freedom. The use of force to achieve equality will destroy freedom, and the force, introduced for good purposes, will end up in the hands of people who use it to promote their own interest." And this always goes back to the inherent nature of mankind. And see, people quote natural law, but natural law is from a higher perspective than man in his nature. Man in his nature aspect is thinking in his lower brain, right? It's what feels good, what tastes good, all the senses. And we see that in society. You can't get away from it. Where the intellectual man is going to, with what Kikero said, the wise men are instructed by reason, men of less intelligence by experience, and then finally the beasts by their nature, right? That's what he's talking about there. Where the wise man is going to sit and calculate the risk versus the reward before he acts, right? He's going to think about how my actions may affect others and things of that nature, right? And I'm going to try to apply equality to the best of my ability, in the hope, in the knowing that individual liberty can't disappear, because there can be no common good without individual liberty. It's impossible. So force common good, force public good, and all these other doctrines that we hear all the time is really a theft of individual liberty.
Yeah, because it's got to come from, I mean, that's not going to change anybody's mind. If you have to have a quota of a certain type of person at your workplace that you have to hire, then that's going to get people in there that maybe aren't completely qualified for the job, and it's going to cause a lot of resentment and a chain reaction of things that are just going to cause other problems. And go ahead.
Well, equal opportunity does not equal outcome. And I think that has a lot to do with this, is that people are asking for equality, but they're not understanding that ultimately they are the architect of the outcome. Yeah. It's not somebody else's fault or problem if you haven't, quote unquote made it in life. Maybe it's your own actions. And I think that adolescence that you're talking about is this kind of me culture that we live in, me society that wants everything without putting in the work to get those things.
Well, right, and we'll start with the base of all reality, right? And we'll start that with. I always equate it to mind idea expression. Okay, so first you have to have the ability of consciousness. Okay, you can decide whatever you want to call it. I call it God. All right, and that's the consciousness and awareness. I am. I am that I am. That's biblically speaking. I is the singular present noun, right? Possessive, and am is the present state of being. So if a man can't change his perception of reality, and I'll give a hypothetical here, I, Brandon, think I'm a victim of circumstance, right? And that my past inhibits me from moving forward or getting anything. Well, what is my reality going to be? It can't be any different. That's right. That's right. I have made it. I have the mind. I have the thought, and then I'm going to express it into reality with my Eeyore type mentality. And then people aren't going to want to be around me. They're not going to want to deal with me. They're going to go, "Oh man, that dude right he's seriously messed up in the head." And this is worldwide now, because we have everybody in this victim mentality, whatever movement it is. But the truth is that everyone is the arbiter on their own fate. If you can change your perception of reality, you can change your reality. I am 100% living proof, witness, and testimony to this. I went from a man 7 years ago, hating Jews, hating Catholics, just living with hate filled in my heart. Trying to find somebody to blame for my problems, and it wasn't until I went to the man in the mirror and I looked at my problems and said, "This is what you have to change." So if you want to change the world, you have to change yourself first.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And a lot of those thoughts are based on fear.
Yeah,
so it's really coming that you can distill that energy down to fear of success, fear of responsibility. And I think that that's what stops a lot of people in their own journey, is that they're writing the wrong story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because fear is the greatest inhibitor of action. Okay, you can have, so one of the, faith without works is dead, right? So you can, if you don't tie all three of the aspects together, you're not doing it right. So, and you're 100% correct. We are not given the spirit of fear that lead us back to bondage, right? But power, love, and a sound mind. And people think of love like this, but the word from the Greek has so much more meaning. And even in Webster's 1828, love is courage in the face of fear, right? Things of that nature. It is the antithesis to fear, right? It is the solution versus the problem, because you no longer fear. One of the great Bible quotes is, "O death, where art thou sting?" That's when fear no longer lives in your house. You're not worried about this temporal vessel anymore. You don't. Mankind is the only being that I know of. I can go outside, catch a rabbit, shake a gun at its head, and tell it if it don't do it, the rabbit's still going to be by its nature. Not man. Man can be coaxed and moved and pushed through fear. And that's why we have this 24/7 daily dose of fear, because they know they can manipulate and move the masses with the fear, because they're unconscious of the manipulation device.
And it also lowers your IQ.
Yeah.
Well, yes. The madness of the mob. Go ahead.
Yeah, all you have to do is have interactions with people.
Yeah.
Right. You walk into work in the morning, or go to the coffee shop, and you hear everybody talking about things they think they know, right? And they really don't know anything. They're just regurgitating something that they heard or watched on social media. They didn't even go do any checking on it. I watched the people in Portland yesterday, or Oregon somewhere, tear the streets of Oregon up, but yet because of Roe v. Wade, Yet Oregon has full abortion laws already in place. But they tore the city up.
Go ahead. Were you going to say something? I was just going to say, and I've said it 100 times before on this podcast, but that's a sign that we're actually doing pretty good. If we're getting pissed off and up in arms about things like that, like we're doing all right. If we have to start sitting around and thinking of new ways to divide each other and new reasons to feel outraged, and like that means that our civilization, we're not for a lack of food or cable channels or anything like that. We have time to sit and contemplate things that aren't life or death situations.
Right.
Well, what I found fascinating by it is that all these people that are protesting the right to murder. Mm-hmm. And none of them are talking about the right of responsibility, of sexual responsibility, the honoring the body, your own human body. Then I've not heard one person in this dialogue say, well, really what this has done is this has created an opportunity that we can educate people about preventing pregnancies so we don't have to use abortion as a form of contraception. Because that's really what it is.
That doesn't fit the narrative, because what have we created through social media and dating websites is this: everybody puts their private junk right out into the open,
exactly.
Right? And we have this sexually promiscuous society that does 10, 15, 20 people a week. It's the point of demoralization is that it eats the useful idiots, right? When you get to a point, these people really don't realize that if COVID was successful, we would have moved into a communist society and they would have been the first ones gone.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and what I think what's so upsetting, not just as a woman, but as a human, is to observe that women specifically have been taught that their value is intrinsically related to their sexuality and their ability to be sexual. So women are being taught that if you are promiscuous, that actually means you're liberated. And you're free.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that is so backward and so twisted, because that's not, it's like, well, we want to be like men, so we want to be sexually promiscuous.
Like the worst parts of men.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. The absolute worst part of anybody, right? So when you make a commitment to someone, whether you got a paid piece of paper or not, there comes these principles into play: honor, integrity, truthfulness, things that we're supposed to be teaching our youth. But it's the upside down world that we live in right now. And that's why people with any sense aren't sending their kids to the public schools like we are not. I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to raise my boys with some intelligence. Thankfully, my daughter, who did go to public school, was able to break that indoctrination training as I grew up too. But I had a daughter when I was 15 years old. You know what I did? I quit school and went to work. There's repercussions and consequences for your actions.
Exactly. So you didn't flee the scene.
No, I knew that at 15 years old. I was like, well, that's it. There goes my football career. I got to go to work. But that's the difference between, what is it, 3 generations now since I was born in 80, maybe 4 generations now, right? You look at the quickness at which it dropped off, right? And we'll just go 10 years ago. I don't have any problem with gay people expressing that they're gay. That's their private choice. I don't need to know what you do in your bedroom. That's your private choice, okay? Well, I just want to talk about the depravity of mind and how quickly it catches fire. Within 10 years of gay marriage, we just want to be accepted. That's all we want to do. We want to be accepted. We want to get married. Okay, that's fine. Here you go. Within 10 years, we got 750 different genders and mass psychosis of a whole generation of children that don't know what they are. And I mean, it's at what point do you step off the crazy train, right? At some point, these children must let the adults in the room speak. And unfortunately, there's not many. it's time for the adults to take back over, and that's what we're doing.
For sure. Definitely. Well, in light of all this subjectivity, do you think that the truth is subjective, or do you think it's some objective concept?
No, objective truth is hardline objective, right? But so subjective truth is individual to you, all right? My abstract ideas are what I believe and what I've experienced in the spiritual. I can't go force that on anybody. And that's a loss. That's a loss of liberty. So, and that goes back to the reasonable man doctrine, right? The beauty of law, American jurisprudence, as it was originally intended, is that it fits the spiritual ideas, right? So, reasonable man, reasonable man doctrine is one of the greatest doctrines ever written, and that means I know I don't cross that barrier and force anything on anybody else. I don't proselytize anybody. Why not? It's not my job. I plant seeds and that's it. You got to turn the light on, and God will give the increase, or however, but you have to turn the light on within and question reality or question what you've been told. And we all got to that point. I remember the day that I did it. I was like, something's not right here. Something don't fit in this reality. I feel like I'm being lied to. Whatever it was, everybody has that day or time when they started questioning things.
For sure. Or it's a more gradual process. I think it's still, I'm still very much in the midst of it. And listening to your talks, your interviews that you've done, you and Alphonse on your channel, which I've been doing a lot the last few days, totally mind-blowing, enlightening stuff. I'm just beginning to grasp it and finding out that it's really, in some ways, it's not as complex and complicated as it seems to be from the outside. Once you grasp just a few key concepts, you're on your way.
Yeah, you're starting from zero.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then as older people, what do we have? What do we have in our way? We have our own cognitive barriers that we must overcome. We've got our confirmation biases that we need to overcome. We've got to overcome what we think we know. And that's harder to do as you get older. It just is. That's why it's so imperative to take the fresh mind and educate it as much as possible. But we're not educating anymore. We're schooling like fish in a mason jar, right? We're herding them. We're not really enlightening any minds. But once you drop what you think you know and you just start focusing on principles, and when I say principle, principle, right? That's the base foundation of something. That bedrock you don't move from. And it really does, the scales start falling from your eyes as you start piecing it together. And you know that once you have that base, you'll go, okay, well, there can be no law that criminalizes good behavior, okay? Can't be a law. It just can't be. It's impossible. There can't be a law that grants somebody else control over my body, okay? I mean, it just can't, because it would violate all natural law precedents. And this is the great thing about American jurisprudence. Once you get in it, you'll find that most of it is built on natural law precedents. You'll see that if you ever go read Justice Clarence Thomas's writings, he's a natural law advocate.
I didn't know that.
Yes, he is.
That's why he's so hated by the left.
Oh, they hate him. They hate him.
Yeah, they
do, because nature tells you that we're supposed to be here creating. That's what we're here to do, not destroying. That's the destructive principle, right? I mean, come on now.
I mean, sometimes you got to burn a field down to make way for new things to grow, but you got to know what those things are, and you've got to have a pretty good plan of what's going to follow after that fire.
Yes.
Yeah. You just can't let chaos take over and go, we'll figure it out when we get there, after it's all razed to the ground. It doesn't work that way.
And, my philosophical viewpoint is one based on, I don't ever want to really hurt anybody. That's my philosophical. If I have to protect my family, I will in that instance. But I don't think it's ever going to happen, because I don't even let those thoughts enter my consciousness that it could happen, right? But at the same time, I can create more problems for more people with this right here. That right
Yes.
there.
Yes. Pen
Okay.
is mightier than the sword.
I can create a bunch of problems for people with that pen, and equivocate it properly, right? And take what we have, work within the framework that we have. No, it's not perfect. There's never going to be a system of law created by man that's perfect, and that's because man in himself is imperfect.
So, about American jurisprudence, I've heard you obviously refer to it many, many times, but what actually is it? Who penned it? Where did it come from? What are its origins?
So, well, Blackwell's, I think it was here. Did my light just turn off? It did. I'll turn it back on in a second. So when we came here from England, we brought with us the Bible and Blackstone's commentary on common law. I think that's what its name was. And just about every home had a Bible and they had the common law. And so instead of people sitting in front of a TV screen or, they read. So you had highly educated people in every family, highly educated people that knew the basis and foundation of law. And this is the beauty of it, right? So civil liberty goes hand in hand with religious freedom, and persecution matures them both. Okay, that's it. So until you face adversity, you can't overcome it. I mean, you have to have that pushback, and you have to personally overcome it. You have to go, okay, there's that little pushback. I did it the whole way through COVID. The first time somebody told me I had to put on a mask, you felt it well up inside of you. You got, what? No, I'm not going to act crazy. I'm just going to state the truth. And you overcome the adversity, and then it gets easier every time, because it's once you step over that boundary of fear, and once you step over it, you realize, well, that didn't really hurt that bad.
Yeah, and that's how you test yourself. That's what all of these people who are, so me-centric and want the world to conform to their every little whim so that they can feel comfortable don't realize is that you need that to push against, to test your mettle, to see, is this belief, does it have a place in this world? Does it make sense for me to think this way? If I have a conversation with somebody that thinks differently, are they going to maybe tell me an aspect of this subject that I hadn't thought of before, or put it in somebody else's different context of their experience and their life? Yeah. I mean, adversity is the way we figure stuff out. It's the way we figure out what we're made of, how we problem solve.
Yeah. And as you grow in spirituality and knowledge, what you'll do is you'll quit trying to find the things that separate you and try to find the common ground. And that's what an adult does. Let's if you have that conversation with most people, you'll find that they're not that far off. They're either ideologically subverted. Now, I'm not talking about Joe Blow, the crackhead down the street. I'm not going to try to have a conversation with that guy. He's off in clown cuckoo land. But like even the young ladies that work at my office who are clearly ideologically aligned left, way left, I keep having conversations with them, challenge their logic and reason, right? Well, how can you think this and think this at the same time? It's a false dichotomy. You can't hold these two contrarian beliefs at the same time. It doesn't work. Do you understand the logic and reasoning behind this? And they go, I never thought of it that way. Well, you might want to give it a little bit more thought.
Because they've never been challenged.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be a hostile challenge, right? And I think that's what our big problem with this two-party system and like the hyperpolarization of every topic. You'll notice every topic that comes across the board right now, it doesn't matter whether it's the right or the left, it doesn't matter. It's hyperpolarized. It's to the point of people losing their entire minds, like all reality stop. That is hyperpolarization of topics. That's where you can't even sit and discuss The difference is that you may have that way you can find the common ground. It's just all emotional based, and that means it's in a lower reptilian brain. It's not of the higher consciousness. It makes no sense. You can't find the common ground with somebody already ranting and raving and screaming like a lunatic.
It's not very conducive to conversation, to exchange.
No,
Right, but those
not,
folks aren't. They're not trying to have conversations. They're not.
No.
They're not. That's not the intention of what they're doing. That they're not trying to meet you in common ground, because my perception of their perception is that by doing that, somehow you've won. If they get off of their bully pulpit, then you've won and they've lost. And we've talked about this before, like, no one wants to feel stupid. No one wants to feel like our ego would rather die than change. So people, in my experience, people double down when you get into this dialogue. They'll either shut down and they won't have any kind of a conversation with you, or they'll double down and it makes them more aggressive and more entrenched in their ideology. I think what's fascinating is that there's this need to be right. Everybody wants to be right, and we want to feel like we're part of our community or a part of our tribe. And so we're going to be illogical, as it sounds like these ladies are being, because we fit in with our group. And that's the most important thing. It's fitting in. We don't want to be a part. We don't want to be individuals. We want to be part of a collective.
And that's, I call it, hold on, Brandon. I call it the deer in the headlight look. When you're in conversation with somebody and their eyes get this big around, you've got to disengage. Okay? There's no point in going any further with this individual because their mind's locked off. You've triggered a defense mechanism with them, and this comes from experience. We've got to grow into this awareness that we know when we're interacting with people when this happens, and I catch it when I see the deer in the headlight look. I'm like, okay, that's it, because once you trigger a defense mechanism, they're not open to actual dialogue at that point in time. So you as the higher intelligent being need to disengage and walk away.
Yeah, because the reptilian brain is taken over and they are in survival at that point.
Right. Because their whole ideology aligns with whatever groupthink that they have. It's very sad to watch. It's more akin to mental illness than it is anything else. It really, and that's what it is. There's no way around it. Not to talk about people that are mentally retarded in that sense, but retard means to slow down. It means to slow down the faculties of mind. Okay, someone of average intelligence can actually retard themselves through groupthink. And that means they don't ever expand their thoughts, like you said earlier, that they never, and I said too, it's a case of suspended adolescence. They don't move forward. They don't move through the natural stages of mankind, where my grandpa was the wisest man I ever spoke to. And he passed down that knowledge. He was an engineer at Exxon, very intelligent man. All right. And he was always in his higher mind. He always was. It was wonderful to have those conversations with him. And if we don't alter this, we'll have people shaking, 90-year-old grandmas shaking their thing on TikTok all day long. And what can your culture be like with that?
It's so interesting because in a collectivist society, like in China or other countries around the world, in the Middle East, people as they age are considered to be elders, considered to be wise. They are the ones, like, you don't put an old person out to pasture. You don't put them necessarily in an old folks home. This is a very westernized idea that has kind of bled over into China, but people live in multi-generational homes. So you have grandparents and great-grandparents in some circumstances raising grandchildren and great-grandchildren. in our culture, because we live in a very individualistic culture, the idea of being old or older means that you're done. So the reason 80-year-old grandma's on TikTok is because she's trying to be 17 again, because that means you're relevant and that you still have value in our society. So I think some of this has to do with our ability to be free and what we do with that freedom.
Yeah, and it does, because we've left the traditional roles too, just like the traditional roles. Of course, this is part of the big issue. We've broken up the family nucleus, right? And women begged for equal rights and everything else. They already had them, but what they got bamboozled into thinking was that it was going to be better in the workforce, but it really wasn't. Each stage you destroyed the family nucleus is what you did, and what bonded families together. And now we've made an entire commercialized system of, let's get rid of grandma and grandpa, send them to the old folks home, you know. And of course, this revolves back into modern medicine and what they do to grandmas and grandpas now. If they're stuck on modern medicine, destroy their kidneys and their brain function with statin drugs and everything else, causes dementia and everything.
What's so interesting about the women's movement is that not all women were for the women's movement.
No.
Not all women wanted necessarily, quote unquote, equal rights. And I think some women saw, down the road that, oh, this is about taxation. And now we can tax two people in a family. And this is going to make our children vulnerable. And this is going to take me out of the home. And I'm not going to be cooking for my family anymore. So this network that we have inside our home, where we sit down to dinner together and we have this communal meal, that's gone. So now the children, as we discussed in our last interview, the children are left vulnerable, and the women actually have two jobs because they still have to run the house, but now they've got to do like outside work too. So this second shift is what it's the term that was created for that, created more stress for women, more anxiety, and more of a bifurcation in the family, because women were stretched beyond their means and their capacity.
And I'll just give experience, right? Has anybody, I've worked in places with 20 to 30 women in one office. That's a nightmare scenario. They don't get along. They hate each other. They it's like a viper pit. It's not natural. I'm serious. It's just not natural. It's an unnatural element for most women. My significant other, she left the workforce 15 years ago, and it was the same reason. She felt unnatural in it, right? It didn't fit her at all. And that's because the natural element is what you were speaking about, where the man is the nurture aspect, the caregiver, the provider. The nature aspect, not the nurture. And the mother is supposed to be the nurture aspect. Had it backwards there, right? And we've left that balance of life. And you're right. It was aimed at. It started with the first few culture ideological subverters through propaganda, Edward Bernays and everything else. But it's been a full onslaught for a good 90, 100 years of moving down this path. And thankfully, and I'll say this again, COVID-19 was the best thing that ever happened to this country or this world, because it snapped people up out of their deadly dreams of good and evil. They snapped them awake. The second best thing for this country is the woke culture. And what I mean by that is that you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that the destruction of language and these 700 different genders and everything else is bad. Okay, this can't be good for our posterity, right? And now it's creeping into my daughter's school. They want my son to wear a dress at daycare. All these ideas. And it's a perfect storm. And again, we have the best time ahead of us to to make all these changes. And I do believe, I'm not a doom and gloom guy. Life has been good for me the whole through COVID. A little stressful periods, right, but we made it through. So, like the old song, "Change Gonna Come," right? Well, that's the one thing that's positive. So, as we continue to move forward, people recognize their individual identity, right? Where their power comes from, where their sovereignty comes from, and why it's written in the Declaration of Independence the way it is. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. They'll understand and grasp why that concept is there. And the reason for the push to quote unquote kill God, right? Because they want to move to an all state society where the state is God. And of course, if we ever allow that to happen, there is no individual liberty, and then everything that's good is destroyed.
And you've spoken of statism being a cult too. I mean, it is.
It's a religion.
Yeah, for sure. So part of sovereignty is ways that we can extricate ourselves from statism. And so I guess the question that I find myself asking is to what extreme to go? What lengths do you go to do that? I mean, you've also spoken of people who should be governed, who really can't or refuse to self-govern themselves or to engage in the self-reflection and self-knowledge that it takes to self-govern. So how does a society look like of people of both ilks? People who need to be governed and people who can govern themselves. How does that work?
Well, first off, a highly educated society is a liberated society. Okay. So one of the things that has to happen is a complete dismantling of the education system here, which is aimed at not educating anybody. Okay. And I'll just give a personal example. My two boys are homeschooled. And my 8-year-old's at a ninth grade, what would be called a ninth grade education. But my 9-year-old also has his own lawn. My 8-year-old already has his own lawnmower, his own trailer, his own tools. We've got it too good for too long. We're letting these digital devices raise our youth. Telling what they're watching, and it has to end. And sovereignty begins with oneself, right? I mean, I just want to read this quote real quick. From the political point of view, there's but a single principle: the sovereignty of man over himself. The sovereignty of oneself over oneself is called liberty. And so we'll go back to that, what you were discussing, the comment I made, actually come from Teddy Roosevelt. It's one of the ones I've pretty much memorized. And if you can't self-govern, and so first off, self-government can't just be given away. It's an obtainment, right? An 18-year-old man, in all his ignorance and hubris, can he self-govern? Probably not. He's still got some stupid things to do. That's just reality, right? So you have to have, you need civil, you need the civil law. You have to have it. We've got a great system here that's trying to be dismantled, but it's a great system in theory. And in action, when you act it properly with knowledge, you're going to be just fine. But so with self-mastery, self-control, and self-discipline, the man can have self-government. He can have it. But to those who cannot exhibit this behavior, they're going to be controlled from without. And that's just the truth. So the guy out there running around, like my neighbors, doing meth and stuff all the time, cops are there 4 times a week. They don't do anything because that's not their purpose. They're going to go sit out in this corner and write tickets all day. Well, and that's what everything's turned into. It's really sad. I don't know if I talked to you when I talked to you last time. Had I already served the city of Central? No. In the court case? No. Okay, so I didn't think so. So I served the city of Central for a friend of mine writing a lawsuit. And this goes back to our previous conversation. I won't speak on that long. How you can have the best conversations with some people if you just spark the conversation. You don't ever know. You don't ever know uh, when you're in the presence of angels, okay? Right? You got to try. So anyway, I walk in there, I serve the lawsuit. Ma'am, would you sign this? This is the service process. And she goes, well, the mayor's not here. And then she just starts talking. I've been working here for 25 years. What is the lawsuit about? She starts reading it. Oh, this is pretty good. And she just starts talking. She's like, I've been here for 25 years, and let me tell you, 25 years ago, we had good people in here. These people, and she turns out all the pictures on the wall. These people are as corrupt as can be. It was funny. As I spent 30 minutes talking to this lady as I'm serving a lawsuit on that organization. So people do know. There's more of us than we recognize. The vocal minority are the babies, right? The silent majority is finally getting fed up, which is everyday mom and dad. And they're going to speed it up even faster with the high gas prices, no food on the shelves, and all this other stuff, which is an attempt to put everybody back into a fear shock. But I think your everyday Joe Blow is finally getting to the point where he's had enough.
Yeah, exactly. I want to circle back to who needs to be governed, and I think that there are people. There will always be a segment of the population that is indigent, that is, not capable physically to take care of themselves. And I think those are the people that need to be protected. What is unfortunate is that there's a large swath of our population now who wants to be seen as that category. So it's almost, I have worked in the mental health care field. I am going into the mental health care field. And I think a lot of people, and again, this is my opinion, I'm not stating something as a fact. This is my subjective truth. I think a lot of people use mental health status as an excuse to opt out of society and not participate. And I think those are the people that we are really trying to kind of put the shine the light on. It is that, this is the world you've created. You've created a world where you are a slave to a system that basically just wants you to be a consumer and doesn't want you to be an active participant. So I think that's something that's really important for us to examine, is like, how do we walk in this world with this swath of people? How do we engage in that without indoctrinating them or reinforcing what they're doing?
And I think we have an issue too, just speaking on that, where people act out just to be included in some group, some type of mental illness, right? You can usually tell, in my experience, the people who are really mentally ill, okay? They have a legit excuse, or you can usually tell the eyes are a little different, their facial features are different, not always. And I'll give an example from the closest of my heart. I've got a mama and an uncle, both on SSI, right? They're not mentally ill. There's nothing wrong with them. You know what their problem is? Their inability to face reality. That's what their problem is. And they want to go self-medicate to hide from all the guilt and all the mistakes that they made. And again, that's part of a mental illness, but it's spiritual in nature, not that they can't do it. It's an active choice to not do it. It's totally different than the people you're trying to help. And there's always going to be those. That's why people say we don't need government at all. That's a lie. We do. You have to have some form of order that's going on. The entire initiation of the republic, the Constitution of the Republic, was a great idea. Like all great ideas, they degenerate over time. I mean, it's just the natural course of history. There's no new thing under the sun. Everything that has been shall be again. So we had it great. Each successive generation doesn't know what it took to get that greatness, and it just goes back until it comes back around to a generation. I think it's our generation, maybe my child. It may go that far, but this is going to be the generation of back into enlightenment. It's going to be spiritual regeneration, right? And that's just the way it's going to be. I don't think this cycle ever stops.
And that seems as good a place as any to end the first free hour. To hear the next hour and 15 minutes, go to patreon.com/themeltpodcast, and there for as little as $3 measly little dollars per month, you can hear extended episodes, early episodes, and exclusive episodes, and also gain access to monthly Melt meetups. In the second hour, we heard about disengaging from the corporation that is our government, spiritual and intellectual growth, Brandon's take on a personal legal matter of mine, the faulty family court system, law as opposed to administrative code, family divisions due to vaccine issues, and much, much more. It was a great, great conversation. This topic is so utterly vast that it really, really helps to have a good guide in this territory, and Brandon definitely qualifies for that. Thank you all so very, very much for listening. It would be a big help for you to support us in any way that you see fit. But a way that you could do it that doesn't involve money would be to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And that can be found in the episode notes, along with lots of other links that will take you places, along with where Brandon can be found on YouTube. And I think that sums it all up. Thank you again so very, very much for listening. I hope you were able to glean something positive, and we look forward to delivering you more fantastic content. And believe me, there is a lot lined up and coming your way. So stay tuned. Until next time, take care, people. If you've liked what you've heard and would like to contribute to The Melt, there are a few ways that you can do that. The most tangible would be financially. Just click the Patreon link in the episode notes, and there you will find ways that you can contribute for as little as $3 a month. This will give you access to bonus episodes, early access to regular episodes, and you can also participate in monthly Zoom meetups. Contributing financially will also help make The Melt better, pay the bills, and help to make this podcast a full-time endeavor that I can fully devote my time to and provide you with more content. Another way of contributing would be to go to wherever it is that you subscribe to The Melt and give it a favorable review or rating, and this will help it to reach more people. You can also spread the word to friends and family via social media, email, or word of mouth. And lastly, if none of those options are readily available or appealing to you, simply send your positive thoughts and intentions. In an interconnected and quantumly entangled multiverse, these also go a long way. Thank you.